I told them, no. Point blank period, and everybody gasped.
See this right here? Now this is disrespectful.
She continued to whip.
Okay, let's go. Yeah, come for him. Okay, wait a minute.
It's about to be cut off because I took my credit card off because I found out that Tawanda has been using my credit card to pay her phone bill.
He died 10 weeks ago. She stood in front of the cameras, tears on her lashes, voice shaking, and calmly announced she was 8 weeks pregnant with his child. The moment those words left her mouth, the internet stopped breathing. Because you don't need to be a doctor to know those numbers don't sit right. Overnight, this so-called miracle pregnancy turned into a timeline disaster. Commentators started pulling receipts, fans began stitching together old live clips, and distant relatives suddenly had inside information. Was this a tragic love story wrapped in confusion, or a carefully staged performance that just slipped? By the time she walked into court, the tension was already electric. Family members were avoiding eye contact, his best friend refused to sit on her side, and reporters were whispering one question over and over again under their breath. If he's been in the ground for 10 weeks, how is she only 8 weeks along? And then, right there in the packed courtroom, one simple request changed everything. A calm voice asked for a DNA test. Her smile vanished, her legs buckled, and what happened next has people wondering if they just watched grief or the beginning of a massive lie collapsing in real time. When the cameras turned off that day, a lot of people thought the story was over. A tragic loss, a grieving wife, a community trying to move on. But if you listen to what people are saying online right now, they're calling that moment the start of something much darker. Because according to all these posts, comments, and so-called leaks, the timeline around this miracle baby is not just messy, it is almost impossible to defend. 10 weeks ago, he was laid to rest. Let's call him Ethan for the sake of this story. A young, driven, very public guy with a growing platform and a carefully curated image. Videos of him laughing with fans, surprising his mother with a new car, hugging his wife backstage at his events, all of that went viral when he passed. People cried over strangers that week. They replayed his clips, shared emotional edits, wrote long paragraphs about how unfair life is. And right at the center of every tribute was his wife, Maya, the woman standing in black, holding back tears, squeezing her hands together like they were the only thing keeping her upright. For weeks, she did exactly what everyone expected. She posted filtered prayers and soft quotes about grief, she thanked fans for their love and support, spoke gently about missing him every second. Nothing about her seemed off. If anything, people felt protective over her. And then, out of nowhere, she did that interview. Sitting on a couch in a pale dress, hands on her stomach, she smiled through tears and said the words that changed everything. "I just found out I'm 8 weeks pregnant with his baby." The host gasped, the audience sniffled, dramatic music swelled. It was supposed to be a moment of hope in the middle of heartbreak. But the internet is not a studio audience. Fans watch everything twice. And almost immediately, someone commented what everybody else started thinking a few minutes later. Wait, didn't he pass 10 weeks ago? At first, it was just one comment, buried under thousands of heart emojis. Then it became 10, then 100, then full threads where people were writing, "I'm not trying to be mean, but the math is not matching here." Within a few hours, short clips from the interview were being reposted with text over them saying things like, 10 weeks gone, 8 weeks pregnant, how? These were not official statements, just random people online connecting dates. But you could feel the energy shift. The more people talked, the messier it got. Old posts were dug up. Fans remembered her saying in a live stream just 5 days after his death that she didn't know how she could ever try for a baby without him. Some viewers replayed that clip next to the new interview and wrote, "If she already knew she was pregnant back then, why say this?" Others argued she might have been in shock, that grief makes people forget details. And that's the thing. Nobody outside that inner circle truly knows what is real here. But the speculation refused to die down, because for a lot of viewers, this was no longer just a sad love story. This was a puzzle with missing pieces. Soon, their families got pulled in without even saying a word. People started overanalyzing everything. His sister, Laura, posted a black screen on her story with the caption, "Numbers don't lie." She never mentioned Maya, never mentioned the pregnancy, but the timing was brutal. Fans flooded her comments asking, "Is this about the baby? And do you doubt her too?" Laura didn't reply. She just left the story up for a full 24 hours. Some say that silence spoke louder than a full statement ever could. Some say it was just vague grief. Either way, people took it as a sign that something behind the scenes was fractured. Then came the so-called leaked audio. Late at night, an anonymous account posted a short voice note. The voice sounded a lot like Maya, but again, nothing about it is officially confirmed. In the clip, you can hear a woman whispering, "The dates don't line up. I don't know what to do." No names, no context, just that one panicked sentence. The internet did what it always does. Half the people called it obviously fake. The other half said it explained everything. Commentary channels replayed it slowly, pointing out every shaky breath, every break in her voice, saying it sounded like someone caught between guilt and fear. But even in those videos, you can hear the same thing over and over. We don't know if this is real, but if it is, this is huge. So how did all of this end up in a courtroom instead of just staying messy online drama? According to several reports and statements floating around, the issue isn't just emotional, it's legal. Ethan left behind not just memories, but property, contracts, royalties, a future stream of income. And if there is a child on the way, that child has a legal stake in everything. So while people online think this is just about gossip and scandal, the families are sitting inside a courthouse where every week of this pregnancy could change who gets what for decades. When Maya first walked into that building, cameras flashed like crazy. She wore a simple dark dress, no dramatic makeup, hair pulled back. Some said she looked fragile. Others said she looked calculated. It depends who you ask. Behind her walked her parents, eyes low, avoiding reporters. Across the hallway, Ethan's family stood in a tight cluster. His mother clutched a worn photo of him. Laura's jaw was clenched so hard you could see the tension from the other side of the room. They did not hug, they did not greet each other, they acted like strangers forced into the same lift. Inside the courtroom, the air felt heavier than the videos ever show. People imagine it as shouting and chaos, but the worst tension is the quiet kind. Whispers, side glances, the way someone shifts in their chair when a name is mentioned. Maya sat at one table with her attorney, fingers wrapping and unwrapping around a tissue. Every few seconds, she touched her stomach like a reflex. Whether that was love, fear, or performance, nobody can say for sure. The judge watched everything with the tired patience of someone who has seen too many families turn on each other. What really shook people is how carefully everyone spoke that day. No one was allowed to accuse her openly of lying. No one used words like fake pregnancy or affair out loud. Instead, they said phrases like inconsistencies in the reported timeline and questions raised by public statements. It sounded cold and polite, but underneath every sentence was the same ugly implication. When Ethan's lawyer stood up and began outlining the dates, the room went so quiet you could hear someone's bracelet clink 2 rows back.
Call her a liar. He didn't need to. He simply said, "Your Honor, according to medical documents submitted and dates provided in public interviews, there appears to be a 2-week discrepancy that requires clarification." Maya's lawyer objected immediately, saying she was under tremendous emotional stress, that grief can distort memory, that she may simply have miscalculated. And that is possible. Nobody watching from the outside can climb into her mind and confirm what she truly believes. But the problem, at least from what people are saying, is that once money, inheritance, and public reputation are tangled in, even a small mistake looks suspicious, especially when millions of strangers are already dissecting every second of her interviews frame by frame. The judge leaned back, listened, and didn't reveal much. His face stayed neutral, his voice steady. He reminded both sides that this was not a TV show, it was a legal setting. But even he couldn't ignore the noise outside these walls. Everyone in that room knew that whatever happened there would be clipped, posted, captioned, and debated by people who were not present. Fans waiting outside the courthouse were refreshing their phones non-stop, desperate to know if someone would finally address the one question they've been asking since that interview aired. How can a man be gone 10 weeks while his wife says she is 8 weeks along and nobody be expected to ask for proof? As the lawyers went back and forth about dates, statements, and what might be just grief confusion versus what might be something else entirely, you could see Ethan's mother slowly crumble in her seat. She wasn't crying loudly, but her shoulders shook. Laura leaned in, whispering something that made her nod with closed eyes. On the other side, Maya stared straight ahead, cheeks flushed, throat working like she was swallowing hard every few seconds. If you mute the sound and just look at the faces, it doesn't look like a simple paperwork dispute. It looks like a family watching their shared history being pulled apart thread by thread. Outside that courtroom, the world was already choosing sides without hearing a single full sentence from the judge. Fan pages that once posted soft edits of Maya and Ethan were now split in half. Some still called her our grieving queen and begged people to stop attacking her during the hardest season of her life. Others started using phrases like inconsistency queen and timeline drama under her photos. It sounds childish written out like that, but this is exactly how public opinion shifts now. Not through official statements, but through sarcastic captions and comment wars at 3 in the morning. One clip in particular went viral. It wasn't even dramatic in the usual sense. No screaming, no fainting, no mic drops. It was just a few seconds of Maya walking into the courthouse, looking straight ahead, while Ethan's mother turned her back as she passed. Somebody slowed the footage down, added a soft echo sound effect, and wrote, "This turn says everything." In reality, that turn could have meant 100 different things. Maybe she needed a second to breathe. Maybe she didn't want to break down on camera. But viewers who were already suspicious saw it as a mother rejecting the entire pregnancy story in one silent gesture. As the day went on, more and more so-called insiders started sharing their version of events. A friend of a friend claims that Maya had confided in them weeks ago, saying she wasn't sure about the dates. Someone else swore they saw her having a tense conversation outside a clinic long before the interview. None of these accounts came with proof, of course, just words floating through group chats and anonymous posts. But people still listened. They always do when a story is messy and emotional. And the saddest part is that somewhere in the middle of all that noise, an actual unborn child exists, being turned into a symbol before even taking a first birth. Inside, while everyone online was busy forming theories, the legal conversation took a sharper turn. At one point, Ethan's lawyer paused and glanced toward the gallery, as if he could feel the weight of all those eyes even beyond the wooden benches. Then he asked a question that changed the entire mood. "Your Honor," he said gently, "with all due respect to the emotional nature of this case, we believe the fairest and clearest way to protect everyone involved, including the unborn child, is to request a formal DNA test once medically appropriate." You could almost hear hearts drop at that word, DNA. No spin, no poetic speeches, no carefully edited interviews, just a clinical answer. Either the child is Ethan's or the child is not. For a few seconds, you could see Maya's throat tighten. She didn't immediately object. She didn't shout. She just stared at the table in front of her, blinking too fast, her fingers pressing into the tissue until it tore. Her lawyer stood up quickly, voice firm but shaking around the edges. He argued that this request was invasive, that it added pressure to an already traumatized widow, that it was being fueled by online speculation rather than genuine concern. He reminded the judge that people miscalculate gestational weeks all the time, that stress can affect cycles, that medical details are rarely as clean as comment sections think they are. And yes, there is truth in that. Timelines in real life aren't always textbook. Bodies are not calculators. It is absolutely possible for pain and confusion to misspeak on camera. But the other side countered with a different angle. They said this was not about accusing anyone of anything on a personal level. They framed it as a way to restore trust and provide clarity so their son's name would not be dragged through an endless storm of rumors. They said the online chaos was hurting everyone, that each new theory was a blade in an already open wound. They insisted that a clean answer could bring peace, one way or the other. If the child is his, then the world has to shut up and let this woman grieve. If not, then decisions about inheritance and legal rights have to reflect that reality. The judge listened, fingers steepled, eyes heavy. He reminded everyone that the court cannot control what fans say or what comment pages post. But he also admitted that he had seen the clips, heard about the leaked audio, and understood why the questions were multiplying instead of fading. It was a rare moment of honesty from the bench, acknowledging that in this era, no case truly stays trapped within four walls. Everything bleeds out into timelines, hashtags, trending searches. When he finally said he was leaning toward approving a DNA test, you could see the entire room jolt, not physically, but emotionally. Ethan's mother grabbed Laura's hand so tight her knuckles went white. One of Maya's relatives covered their mouth. Reporters scribbled notes as if their pens were running out of ink. And then, all eyes shifted to Maya herself, looking for any sign, any clue, any reaction that could be read as guilt or relief. What she did in that moment depends on who you ask. Some say she looked terrified, like a person who knew the truth was about to drag her into a place she couldn't escape from. Others say she looked simply overwhelmed, like any pregnant woman already under a microscope, suddenly realizing her body was about to become legal evidence. Her shoulders shook, her chest rose and fell too fast, and tears slid down her face. She whispered something to her lawyer that the microphones didn't pick up. He nodded, rested a hand on her arm, and asked the judge for a brief recess so she could compose herself. That short break turned into another wave of online chaos. People waiting in the hallway started texting, calling, recording their guesses. One person posted later, "She broke down the second DNA was mentioned. That tells you everything." Others pushed back, saying, "Maybe she's just exhausted. This doesn't prove anything." Nobody could agree, but everyone kept talking. It is almost like the case itself became background noise, and the reactions, the tiny gestures, the body language became the main show. Back in the courtroom, when they reconvened, the atmosphere felt even heavier. Maya returned with her eyes a little less red, her posture straighter, but you could still see the tension in her jaw. Before anyone else spoke, her lawyer addressed the court. He said she was not refusing a DNA test outright. He said she understood why people had questions, but he also insisted that this was not a confession of any wrongdoing. This was a concession to a reality where grief is no longer private and where a simple misstatement can spiral into a global scandal overnight. And this is where another layer of drama opened up. Because while the focus stayed on numbers and biology, whispers about another name started floating through the gallery. No one said it into a microphone, no one filed it in an official motion, but people seated in the back began trading looks and murmuring about a man who had been seen with Maya around the time she might have conceived. Again, to be clear, these are whispers, not facts, the kind of unverified details that spread faster than truth ever can. Some claimed he used to work on Ethan's team. Others said he was just a family friend who helped with errands and events when times got stressful. There were stories about late-night visits to the house, quiet conversations in parked cars, blurry photos that could be anyone. One person swore they saw him slipping into the courthouse side entrance later, head down, avoiding cameras. Was it really him or just another man in a dark jacket? No one can say for sure, but one thing is certain. Once a mysterious other man is introduced into a narrative like this, even in rumor form, the story takes on a life of its own. Fans began digging through old clips and photos, searching for any glimpse of a familiar face in the background. Freeze frames of group shots at parties started circulating. People zoomed in on the edges, circling shadows and half smiles, asking, "Is this him?" A few screenshots gathered thousands of likes, despite the fact that nobody had any confirmation. They just looked like puzzles, and viewers love puzzles, especially when hearts and betrayal might be involved. All of this, of course, made things worse inside that courtroom. Whether those whispers had any basis or not, everybody could feel the pressure building. Maya was no longer just a grieving wife in the public eye. She had become a character in a story that strangers were writing in real time. A story where every pause, every tear, every tremor in her voice stood trial alongside her. Through it all, Ethan's father, who had been quiet for most of the proceedings, finally spoke up. He didn't accuse her directly, he didn't shout or point, he just looked at the judge with tired eyes and said, "All I want, Your Honor, is to know the truth about my grandchild. Not for the cameras, not for the gossip, just for our family. We have already buried our son. We cannot bury ourselves under questions for the rest of our lives." Those words seemed to cut through the legal language for a moment. Even Maya glanced up when he spoke. There is something about a parent's pain that hits different, no matter which side you are on. The judge nodded slowly and said that this was precisely why clarity mattered. Not to shame anyone, not to fuel speculation, but to stop this story from stretching into something even more toxic than it already was. By the end of that day, no final answers had been given. No test results existed yet. The only thing that had truly changed was that now the possibility of a DNA test was officially on the table, not just a rumor. They left the courtroom with more questions than they started with, but those questions were no longer just online speculation. They were now written into the record, and that made everything feel more real, more dangerous, and a lot harder to run from. When everyone stepped out of the building that day, it didn't feel like a normal court adjournment. It felt like an episode break. The hallway was thick with low voices and camera shutters, and people who had never met Ethan or Maya in real life were already narrating the scene on their phones like they were live commentators. One girl stared straight into her camera and whispered, "You guys, they actually talked about a DNA test. This is getting insane." While another muttered behind her, "Watch, by tonight there'll be 10 different versions of what happened." By the time the first car pulled away from the courthouse, the internet had already split the day into clips, memes, and mini documentaries. One short video of Maya wiping her eyes as she walked down the steps hit 500,000 views in a few hours. Someone slowed the footage, added dramatic music, and wrote, "Is this heartbreak or panic?" under it. Comments flooded in. "She looks terrified. She looks exhausted. She looks like someone who just realized this will never end." People were projecting their own stories onto a stranger's face, reading guilt, relief, or pure shock into the same frame. Maya's family hurried her into a dark sedan, shielding her from questions being shouted from every direction. "Are you scared of the test? Did you lie about the dates? Do you have anything to say to Ethan's family?" She didn't answer. Her hands stayed pressed to her stomach, fingers shaking. One reporter swore they heard her whisper, "Please, just drive," as the door slammed shut. We can't confirm that, of course, but that line started trending within hours, turned into captions over screenshots of her with puffy eyes and clenched teeth. Across the parking lot, Ethan's family moved slower. His mother held onto Lara's arm, and every few steps, someone tried to ask her if she wanted the baby to be part of the family. She didn't speak, but the way her mouth tightened at the word baby made even some reporters step back. It's easy to throw questions when you're behind a lens. It's harder when you see a mother who has already buried her child being forced to imagine every possible version of the future in front of strangers. Later that evening, a new angle blew up. A grainy photo surfaced of a man who looked like the rumored other friend walking past the side entrance of the courthouse. His head was down, his face half covered by a cap, and honestly, he could have been anyone. But that didn't stop people from zooming in, comparing jawlines, matching shoes from old posts. The caption on the photo read, "Funny how he shows up the same day DNA gets mentioned." Again, nobody had proof, nobody had a statement from him. But once a narrative grabs onto a face, even a blurry one, it's almost impossible to pull it back. Commentary channels had a field day. Some tried to stay neutral, repeating over and over that what they were discussing are claims and reactions, not confirmed facts. Others leaned fully into the drama, talking about secret timelines and RM allegedly in the background. One host narrowed her eyes at the camera and said, "Look, we're not saying anything happened. We're just asking the questions everyone is clearly already asking." That sentence alone gave her enough cover to lean into every rumor without ever owning them as her own words. While the digital world dissected frames and tones of voice, things behind closed doors were much quieter and much harsher. According to people close to the family, Ethan's parents and sister had a tense meeting with their legal team that night. They were tired of watching their son's name attached to every headline about doubt and betrayal. One person who claims to know them said Ethan's mother broke down at the table and said, "If this child is his, I will love them with everything I have."
But I need to know. I can't live on maybes. Again, we only have this secondhand, but the sentence sprayed like wildfire because it captured exactly what viewers were feeling too. The difference was, for her, it wasn't content, it was her life. On Maya's side, things were reportedly spiraling in a different way. A friend of hers, who chose not to be named in any interview, told one small podcast that Maya hadn't slept properly in days. She claimed Maya kept replaying that first interview in her head, the one where she said 8 weeks so clearly, over and over, wondering if one choice of words had permanently ruined her chance at a private pregnancy. According to this friend, Maya feels like she's stuck in a loop where no matter what she says now, people will twist it into proof that she is lying. She's scared of the test, the friend allegedly said, not because she thinks it'll expose some huge secret, but because she doesn't trust anyone to handle the results without turning them into a spectacle. If that's true, it adds another layer of tragedy to the story. Even a simple answer might not bring peace anymore because the journey to that answer has already turned into a circus. Meanwhile, more footage from inside the courtroom leaked out through sketch artists' notes, secondhand recounts, and people who had been sitting in the back rows taking quiet mental screenshots. One detail that kept resurfacing was a moment when Maya looked over at Ethan's father as he was leaving. Multiple people say she whispered, "I never meant for this," under her breath. He didn't respond. He kept walking. Some see that as a man refusing to give her any more emotional space until science speaks. Others think he simply didn't hear her. But the image of her reaching out with her eyes while he moved past her has been replayed in countless storytime videos. The tension didn't stay confined to the main players either. Fans started turning on each other. In one live stream, a supporter of Maya and a supporter of Ethan's family ended up in a heated argument in the comments, accusing each other of heartlessness. "You all want drama more than truth," one wrote. "You want her to be guilty because it makes a better story." The reply came fast. "No, we want the truth because a man is dead and his name is being used to sell a miracle narrative that might not be real." Both sides claimed to be defending justice. Both sides were convinced the other had chosen a character to protect instead of the facts. In the middle of this chaos, a smaller but important detail began surfacing. Several interviews from before Ethan's death showed him talking about wanting children, about how excited he was to be a father someday. In one clip, he laughed and said, "I want at least 3. I'm ready for the chaos." Viewers started reposting that line with captions like, "He wanted this so badly," and "If this baby is his, they deserve to know." It reminded people that beyond the drama, there was once a simple dream, a couple talking about a future that never got the chance to arrive peacefully. As days passed and no official decision on the DNA test was announced yet, everything settled into a strange, tense waiting game. The legal teams were silent, the judge stayed silent, the family stayed mostly silent, posting only vague, tired messages about needing privacy. The only ones talking nonstop were strangers with Wi-Fi. They dissected every no comment like it was code. They speculated about medical appointment dates they had never seen. They watched Maya's profile, counting how many days she went without posting, as if silence itself was a confession. Rumors about the supposed other man intensified too. People claimed he had locked his social media, that he hadn't been seen at his usual spots in town, that friends of his suddenly refused to answer questions. None of that proves anything. People disappear from timelines for 100 reasons.
But once an online crowd decides someone is hiding, every bit of privacy looks suspicious. One clip from months ago resurfaced where he and Ethan joked on stage, bumping shoulders, laughing about how they had each other's backs no matter what. Fans replayed it with heavy captions, calling it the most painful foreshadowing. In reality, it was just two guys sharing a light moment, now reinterpreted through a lens of suspicion. Behind all the messy gossip, there is still that quiet, ugly question hanging over everything. If the test happens and shows that the child is Ethan's, what happens then? Do people apologize and move on? Do the videos get taken down? Or does the story simply twist into a new angle, with everyone saying, "We were just asking questions," as if that erases the weeks of accusations? And if the test shows the child is not his, what then? Will people treat Maya as a cartoon villain, ignoring whatever pain or confusion brought her here? Will that child grow up with their origin story turned into a viral scandal replayed over and over? These are the things no one in those comment sections seems ready to sit with. It is easy to shout that you want the truth. It is much harder to accept how brutal that truth might feel for the people actually living inside it. And yet, despite all the moral speeches and emotional threads, the reality is simple. The story has become too big to fade away quietly. The internet has locked in like a storm, and everyone is just waiting for the next bolt of lightning, the next leak, the next official document to drop. Days later, when everyone expected things to calm down, the opposite happened. Instead of fading, the tension thickened, like the whole city was holding one long, uneven breath. Outside the courthouse on the morning of the next hearing, there weren't just reporters anymore. There were regular people holding handmade signs. Some said, "Let the truth speak." Others said, "Protect the baby, not the gossip." A few even held up photos of Ethan, reminding everyone that beneath the noise, this all started with a man who was no longer here to defend himself or confirm anything. Inside, the air felt different from the last time. Less shock, more resignation. People knew what was coming, even if no one wanted to say it out loud just yet. Maya walked in slowly, wearing a loose dark sweater this time, one hand resting low on her stomach like a shield. She didn't look at the cameras. She barely looked at the benches. Her eyes stayed on the floor until she reached her seat. On the other side, Ethan's family sat rigid, dressed simply, faces as closed as locked doors. When the judge entered, the usual murmurs died even faster than before. Everyone had heard the whispers that he'd spent the last few days reviewing every statement, every motion, every timeline submitted. He didn't waste time on long speeches. He acknowledged that the case had become a public spectacle, though he reminded everyone that the court's duty was not to entertain, but to protect the rights of the living and honor the legacy of the dead. Then he said the words everyone knew were coming, but still weren't ready to hear. He said that due to the conflicting information surrounding dates, interviews, and public perception, he was granting the request for a medical procedure to establish paternity once safe and appropriate. He emphasized that this did not mean anyone was being labeled a liar or a villain. It was, in his words, a necessary step to end uncertainty for all parties involved. Simple, neutral language, but the impact hit like a wave anyway. Maya went very still. She didn't scream or collapse the way some people had predicted. Instead, it was like all movement drained out of her at once. Her fingers loosened around the tissue in her hand. Her lips parted slightly, but no sound came out. Up in the gallery, someone's bracelet clinked against the wooden railing, the only noise in the room while everyone stared at her, waiting for any
sign of what she felt in that second. Her lawyer leaned over, whispering something in her ear, probably about appeals, options, timelines, all the technical words that were supposed to make this feel less final. She nodded slowly, but her eyes stayed fixed on the judge's bench, blinking only when tears blurred everything. From the other side, Ethan's mother bowed her head, one hand pressed over her mouth. Laura's eyes glistened, though she fought to keep her chin high.
If there was any relief in them, it was buried under layers of exhaustion and sadness. The judge didn't stop there. He also granted a temporary order to ensure that no actions were taken that might interfere with future testing. It sounded clinical, but everyone knew what it meant. No sudden, unexplained travel. No decisions about the pregnancy made in panic. No disappearing into the background while the world waited for answers. It was as if invisible lines had been drawn around Maya's life, not to trap her exactly, but to keep the situation from spinning even further out of reach. This part hit her hard. People sitting near her said they saw her shoulders tense, like she'd just been wrapped in chains made of paperwork and protocol. To be fair, for anyone in her position, even without extra drama, the idea of a court dictating what you can or cannot do with your own body and movements would feel suffocating. Add on the weight of millions of strangers watching, and it becomes something almost unimaginable. As proceedings continued, the conversation shifted from if to when. Tentative dates were discussed, windows when testing could be done safely, labs that could handle the results discreetly. The lawyers tossed around phrases like chain of custody and confidential handling, but everyone in that room knew that once the answer existed, keeping it fully private would be almost impossible. Secrets don't stay buried anymore, especially not when the entire saga has already been turned into a story people follow like a serial. At one point, Maya asked to speak quietly with the judge, through her attorney, about privacy protections. She wanted reassurance that her medical information wouldn't just become another leak, another screenshot, another late-night talking point. The judge promised to put every safeguard in place that the law allowed, but he also gently reminded her that some things are simply beyond the court's power. He couldn't control what people might say if even a hint of the outcome reached the public. All he could do was make sure that whatever result appeared on that lab report was real, not altered by panic or pressure. For a brief moment, you could see something flicker across her face that looked like acceptance, or maybe just surrender. She nodded, wiped her face with a shaking hand, and sat back down. From across the aisle, Ethan's father watched her with an expression that was impossible to read. Not sympathy exactly, not anger either. More like someone looking at a storm that has already torn apart their house and realizing that arguing with the clouds will not put the roof back. When the hearing ended, there was no dramatic outburst, no last-minute twist. Just a slow, heavy movement as everyone in that room stood, gathered their things, and walked out into a world waiting to devour their reactions. Outside, the cameras flared back to life. Microphones were lifted. Questions were thrown like stones. Did you agree to the test? Do you still stand by your story? How do you feel about the court's decision? Maya didn't answer. Her lawyer repeated that they respected the court and would comply with all orders while asking for privacy. On the other side, Ethan's family released a short, carefully worded statement through their counsel. They said they were grateful that steps were being taken to bring clarity and that they hoped everyone, including Maya, would eventually find peace once the truth was known. They did not call her out, they did not praise her either. It was measured, balanced, and clearly written with the knowledge that every word would be dissected. Online, of course, nothing stayed measured. Some people posted confetti emojis and wrote, "The test is coming, we're finally going to know." Others posted broken hearts and said they were tired of watching a grieving woman being dragged through public judgment. A few tried to remind everyone that whatever happens next involves an actual child, not just a storyline. Those voices were quieter, drowned under louder shouts of Team Maya and Team Ethan's family. And somewhere in the middle of all that noise, there's that quiet, simple fact. As of now, no result has been made public. All anybody truly knows is what was seen in court, what was read in orders, and what has been claimed in statements and interviews. Everything else, all the wild theories and photo breakdowns and whispered names, lives in that gray zone between curiosity and cruelty. This is why commentators keep repeating that they are talking about reports, impressions, and questions, not confirmed reality. What we do know is that a countdown has started, whether anyone wanted it or not. A countdown to a set of numbers on a lab report that will either calm the storm or turn it into something even more violent. Until that day comes, the story sits in this uncomfortable place where every silence feels suspicious and every word feels like a test balloon. No matter which way the result falls, someone will feel vindicated and someone will feel destroyed. And the rest of the world, the part that has been watching from behind screens, will have to decide what to do with the wreckage of a story they have been consuming like entertainment. So now, here we are, at the edge of the story where everything feels like it is about to tip, but nothing has actually fallen yet. The court has spoken, the orders are in place, the world is waiting, and somewhere in the middle of all of this is one unborn child, a broken family, and a woman whose every breath is being replayed and analyzed in slow motion. Right now, all anyone on the outside really has are interviews, court moments, and reports about what different people say they saw or heard. No official result, no final answer, just 1,000 versions of the same question echoing across timelines. And that is exactly why we have been so careful in how we talked about this today. We are not claiming anything as absolute truth. We are walking you through what is being reported, what people are reacting to, and how this drama is unfolding in real time. When that test is finally done, when that result is quietly printed in some lab, the story is going to change again, one way or another. But until then, all of this lives in that strange space between fact, feeling, and fear. So now, we want to hear from you. Do you think this is a tragic misunderstanding that spun out of control? Or do you feel like there is a deeper story behind that impossible timeline that no one is fully admitting yet? If you were in Maya's place, or in Ethan's family's place, what would you do differently? Tell us in the comments whose perspective you understand more right now and why. If you want to stay updated as the situation develops and more details come out, make sure you tap like, hit subscribe, and turn on the notifications because you know this story is not done. And as soon as there is anything new to break down, we will be right here, going through it with you step by step.